It was just another evening. A teenager walking home after a game, sneakers worn, backpack slung over his shoulder. No crime, no trouble, just a kid being a kid. But in seconds, flashing lights cut through the night, and his world shifted. To the cops, he wasn't a student or a son, he was a suspect. What unfolded wasn't just a stop, it was a showdown that could have cost him everything. And the twist? His father carried a badge of his own. But would that be enough to save him? It was a Saturday evening, the kind of night that felt safe and familiar. 17-year-old Marcus had just wrapped up a game of basketball with his friends at the park. Sweat on his shirt, sneakers worn down. He laughed as he tossed his backpack over his shoulder. This was his routine, walking the few blocks back to his house, where his mom always left the porch light on. Marcus wasn't thinking about danger. He was thinking about college applications, about the music in his headphones, about being young and free for just a little longer. But sometimes, freedom isn't enough when the world sees you differently. That night, he noticed the faint rumble of an engine behind him. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street. The sound made his chest tighten, though he tried to brush it off. It wasn't the first time he'd seen those lights in his neighborhood. What Marcus didn't know was that this time, the officers weren't just passing by. They were watching him, and soon they would stop him. For reasons that had nothing to do with the law. Marcus adjusted his backpack, the beat of his music drowning out most of the world. But he couldn't ignore the low growl of the engine creeping behind him. He glanced back once. 2 white police officers inside a cruiser, eyes locked on him like prey. He told himself to keep walking, to look normal, to do everything right. Yet deep down, he already knew the truth. No matter what he did, tonight he wasn't just Marcus. He was a target. The tires screeched as the cruiser swerved to the curb. Doors slammed. Heavy boots hit the pavement. "Hey!" one barked, though Marcus didn't stop. His mother always told him not to run. His father, an FBI agent, drilled it into him. Stay calm. Don't give them a reason. But what if the reason was already written on his skin? One officer rushed ahead, cutting Marcus off. The other moved behind. Their hands hovered near their weapons, their voices sharp with accusations that didn't exist. He was acting suspicious. He fit the description. Marcus's pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to shout that he'd just come from the park, that he hadn't done anything. But experience told him explanations rarely mattered. The crowd began to form. Neighbors peered out from porches, drawn by flashing lights. Some pulled out phones, others whispered with fear. Marcus felt every eye on him, every second stretching longer than the last. The officers closed in, their questions turning into commands, their tone dripping with hostility. One shoved his shoulder, testing his reaction. Another demanded he empty his bag onto the sidewalk. Basketball shoes, a notebook, a bottle of water. They weren't looking for truth. They were looking for control. Marcus's hands trembled as he lifted his backpack. His mind screamed to stay still, to stay silent, but his chest burned with humiliation. How many times had he heard his father warn him about this exact moment? And yet, no amount of preparation could erase the terror of being trapped in the crosshairs of people who didn't see a teenager, only a suspect. The shouts grew louder. One officer pushed him against the hood of the cruiser, his cheek pressed to the hot metal. Marcus's breath caught, fear rising into panic. He hadn't resisted, hadn't fought back, yet his body was treated like evidence before a crime had even been named. And then, gasps from the crowd. A man stepped forward. A familiar figure, tall, composed, his suit jacket catching the evening breeze. Marcus's father. The badge in his hand gleamed under the streetlight, but his voice carried something far sharper than authority. Still, the question lingered in the air. Would that badge mean anything? Or had the decision already been made? The officer's grip shoved Marcus harder against the hood, the edge of metal biting into his ribs. His chest heaved, breath ragged as the crowd's voices swelled, shouts, gasps, the sharp click of phone cameras recording every second. One cop's hand hovered over his holster, fingers twitching. The other barked orders Marcus couldn't even process. His body froze, not from defiance, but from the paralyzing knowledge that one wrong move could end his life. And then, his father's voice cut through the chaos, calm, steady, but laced with fury. "That's enough." The agents in training at Quantico knew that voice. Criminals had folded under it, but these officers, they didn't move. They didn't release their grip. Instead, one sneered, eyes darting to the badge his father held up. "Doesn't matter who you are," he muttered, pressing Marcus down even harder. For Marcus, time slowed. The sirens in the distance, the hot metal against his cheek, the weight of history pressing on his shoulders, all collided in one unbearable truth. Even the shield of an FBI badge might not protect him here. Not from this. Not tonight. The officer's hand pressed against his holster again. The crowd roared, pleading, recording, praying. His father stepped closer, his voice no longer calm but thunderous, demanding release. Still, hesitation hung in the air like a trigger half pulled. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut, heart pounding, the world reduced to a single terrifying question. Was this the moment he became another name on a list far too long? The officer's hand finally slipped away from his holster. The grip on Marcus's body loosened, slow and reluctant, as if mercy had to be wrestled from their fists. His father stood inches away, badge still in the air, his presence now undeniable. The crowd erupted, some in relief, some in anger, all in disbelief at how close they had come to witnessing another tragedy unfold. Marcus staggered back, chest heaving, the imprint of metal still burning on his skin. He was alive, but he would never be the same. That night he didn't just walk home. He carried the weight of every stare, every shove, every second where his life could have been erased for nothing. His father, an FBI agent trained to face criminals and killers, had never looked more powerless. Because in that moment, authority hadn't mattered. Skin color had. And that's the truth too many people still refuse to face. Marcus's story is not an exception. It's a reflection. A reflection of neighborhoods across America where walking home can feel like a crime, where parents teach their children survival tactics not for accidents or disasters, but for encounters with those sworn to protect. Marcus lived to tell his story. But what about the ones who didn't? What about the names etched into headlines, protests, and memorials? Lives cut short because suspicion replaced humanity. So the question lingers long after the lights fade. How many more families must stand on sidewalks, begging for their children's lives before change finally comes? And when it does, will we remember Marcus not just as the boy who survived, but as a reminder of why no one should ever have to?